Hi there, Ron Shera here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of a Minnesota Bound podcast. Ron Shera, your host today, and the best way to put this is this show is going to be for the birds. Now, normally, that's a compliment, really, because my special guest today is Dale Gentry with the Audubon Society. Dale is located right here in the Twin Cities, although if you're familiar with the Audubon Society, you know it's a national, perhaps even international organization with a long history of bird conservation work. Dale, what do you do here in Minnesota?
Yeah, I am the conservation manager for the state. So I coordinate all of our science and conservation projects in Minnesota. We have a regional office that also covers Iowa and Minnesota, but at least for now, Iowa and Missouri. For now, I'm focused on Minnesota.
Well, you know, thank goodness we have that kind of work going on here. It's no secret that we're losing the war. And you could take a negative viewpoint there, but what keeps you going? Because I just came back from a visit to Iowa State University in Ames, where I went to school, and boy, driving on 35W through northern Iowa I told my wife, there's not a damn place for a mouse to live out there.
It's all corn and soybeans. Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been interested in birds since college, and so the opportunity to play a role in trying to find a little spot for birds amidst our network of farming and urban areas is a great joy for me. And as you mentioned, I don't want to say we're losing the war, but there's reason for concern. There was a big publication that came out 2 years ago that showed that comparing the birds in North America from 1970 to this was 2019, but 2020, we've lost about 29% of our birds, about 3 billion birds. So overall, the population or the community is declining. There are fewer birds than there used to be. So. You know, we hear those anecdotes, but there's data to support that.
Yeah, and it's very difficult for somebody like myself that feeds birds in the backyard or, I have wood duck houses out to make any kind of, ascertain what's going on.
Yeah.
Although, I'll tell you right now, as we talk in the April of 2022, I haven't seen any wood ducks show any interest in my wood duck boxes this year. I mean, I haven't seen any wood ducks.
Yeah.
To speak up. I go, this bird flu, does that, you go, what's going on? Maybe it's such a cold April. I mean, are they still lollygagging somewhere else? I mean,
right.
So you wonder.
Yeah, right. You know, those are good questions. And the bird flu is a concern, and we know that waterfowl are certain are carriers, but also are vulnerable to mortality from that. And it's been a cold year, but there are some general declines. And wood ducks are, as cavity nesters, they're one of the species that's sort of struggling in response to our habit of cutting down trees when they die. It's a dead tree; it's kind of a nuisance. Let's cut it down for safety or for whatever reason. And if it wasn't for people like you putting boxes up, wood ducks and other waterfowl and songbirds and woodpeckers that are dependent on those would be in even worse shape than they are. But
yeah, I've read that and noticed agree there. I don't want to get off the topic because we're going to talk about the Audubon, but we mentioned the bird flu, and Where did this come from? And excuse me, I didn't warn you about this question, so maybe...
No, it's okay. I've been thinking quite a bit about it for the past couple of weeks. It's a very prominent issue. We're getting all kinds of questions, about should I keep my feeders up, and are the birds going to be okay, and what's the situation? It's really great questions. All of us want to do no harm, and so the thought that having a bird feeder up could do so is a concern. So, the bird flu is something that's just been with us. And I think actually COVID has prepared us well to think about this, because we're all much better educated about how diseases spread than we were a couple years ago.
Bird flu isn't a new phenomenon? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the bird flu is not, but the strain of the bird flu is.
Oh.
Right. So this is we had a new strain come up in 2015. A lot of people in Minnesota will remember we had a bunch of turkey and poultry farms that were hit, and they had to cull those birds. And so now we have another new strain. And this year is different even from that strain, because that one was really only affecting, our domestic birds, but we didn't see hardly any birds dying that were wild birds. But this year we're seeing a lot of wild birds die. And so that's caught a lot of people's attention. So we know that it's carried primarily by waterfowl and shorebirds. But for the most part, it doesn't kill them. They're just carriers, they're vectors. But then things like raptors and corvids, ravens and crows and whatnot, will go and eat a dead bird that might have had the bird flu, and then they'll get it, and it might be very serious for them. Kind of like for each of us with COVID, right? One person gets COVID and it's almost nothing, and for somebody else, it's life-threatening.
Does it travel by air too? Because I was looking at, when they first mentioned, hey, this turkey farm in southern Minnesota has got bird flu, and the next thing you know, all over southern Minnesota, miles and miles apart.
Yeah.
You go, how did it get from there to there?
Yeah, it's probably not in air in the same way that COVID does, for example, but it's through bird feces, and so it's.
But they're inside a shed,
Right, right.
There's no eagle flying over and taking a dump on the place,
Yeah, but there probably are waterfowl flying over, and
Really?
and that those feces are spreading through the air, and so the migration season, the movement of all the waterfowl, and the kind of the cool spring and just the cold and wet climate that we have this time of year amplifies it. And it's likely that later in the summer, if it follows the normal pattern, this will become less of an issue, because birds will stop migrating in the summer and it'll warm up, and hopefully it'll go away. But for the next couple weeks to a month, it's going to be a big concern.
Well, you can't gather all the eagles and inoculate them. So
You can't, no.
It has to run its course then,
Right.
what you're saying.
Yep.
Does it mean it'll come back next year, or you don't know?
It could, yeah. We don't know. It's certainly something we're concerned about, and I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist, but it's likely something that will pop up again from time to time, and our hope is that we can take some measures to prevent it spread the best we can.
Well, sometimes these things come across the ocean, or our government does not have the protections they should have had up. I mean, strange things happen. In this case, you're telling me that this was just here. It wasn't anybody that screwed up to have it ravage the countryside.
I think that's right. And that's not a topic I know a huge amount about, but I believe, I know at least that the bird flu is at least of recent history has just been part of our bird community. And occasionally you get these, just like we get seasonal strains of the flu, you get seasonal strains of the bird flu within the bird community. And sometimes they're just a lot more serious ones. And this year we're seeing, the worst strain we've ever had, because it's causing so many wild bird deaths and domestic bird deaths. Certainly very concerned about the poultry industry as well.
Well, although bird flu is, of course, on everybody's concern, it gets all kinds of headlines.
Yeah, right.
What doesn't get headlines are the disappearing grasslands in Minnesota and the other disappearing habitats that made the decline of the populations of our songbirds and other birds that you referred to earlier. And, for example, on Minnesota Bound here, I'm working on a story. I'm calling it The Hunt for Meadowlarks, almost juxtaposition, because you'd never hunt them, but they're so damn rare. I'm looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean by hunting them.
Yep.
And we hope to get out this spring and do that. And we're going to talk about those issues, habitat issues, which I'm guessing, Dale, are heart of most of the problems.
They are, yeah. Of all the concerns we have, whether it's pollution or bird flu or whatever it might be, the loss of habitat is really a number one issue of concern for grassland bird species or forest bird species. Or almost the majority of the bird declines we're seeing are because of lack of habitat, changing the habitat, lower quality of habitat. That's where we feel like we can make the most positive impact, is by improving the habitat, and the birds usually respond well to that in return.
I remember over the years, having worked for South Dakota's Game and Fish Department, etc., when the pheasants went down, everybody was ready to blame the fox and the coyotes and the skunk, and totally ignoring the fact that they had wiped out all the grassland nesting habitat for pheasants and wondered what happened to them. So that never seems to go away.
Yeah. Right. Yep. That's one of our challenges, is trying to find a balance where we can, of course, maintain our commodities and support the agricultural industry, but try and find a little niche for the birds to thrive as well. And, our partners, Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever, do a great job working with those game birds. And Audubon tries to fill that niche, working with the non-game birds, songbirds and shorebirds and raptors and whatnot, trying to find suitable habitat for them as well.
We'll talk more about birds, as this show is for the birds. I'm talking with Dale Gentry from the Audubon Society, and we'll be back chatting more with him right after these important messages.
Hewitt Docks, Lifts, and Pontoon Legs began in a small south-central Minnesota town with a mission to make dock install and removal easier by inventing the Roll-A-Dock. Well, now the company has evolved to provide everything you might need to improve your lake time. In addition to the classic Roll-A-Dock or the new Ultra Dock system, Hewitt offers all-terrain staircases, gangways, canopies, and lifts, along with any accessory you might need. Celebrate 50 years of business with us. Go to HewittRad.com to enter for a chance to win a free dock and monthly prizes. Hewitt Docks, Lifts, and Pontoon Legs. Work hard, play harder. You deserve a Hewitt.
Hey there, Bill Shirk, the man about the woods. Today is a day for adventure, and Cub has all the Nabisco snacks you need to make sure that adventure is delicious from start to finish. Life is just sweeter when you share Oreo cookies on the trail. Also, when you crunch Ritz crackers at the campsite or rock the boat with rich cheese crispers. Stop at Cub on the way to your adventure. The great outdoors is calling. Be sure you bring the snacks.
All right, welcome back. If you just heard my joke, I've said this show is for the birds. I laugh at my own stuff. It's the Minnesota Bound podcast, and it is for the birds because we're talking with Dale Gentry, who is with the Minnesota Audubon Society, and we're going to find out more about what he does. Dale, again, welcome back as we talk birds.
Thanks. So happy to be here.
You said your task here with the Audubon Society, and I hope folks out there know the long conservation history and the famous name of Audubon and their interest, the organization's interest. Audubon himself was quite the wildlife bird artist, long career history there. Mm-hmm. But let's talk, Dale, first about what is Audubon and what you do, et cetera, trying to move the needle here in Minnesota as far as securing a bird future? Yeah,
that's it. Thanks for asking. We do our best to look around the state and just try and get our thumb on what's going on with the bird community and highlight the areas where there's greatest need and go in there and try and make some positive action. And so we are involved in habitat restoration and enhancement. And I think what we see as two of the most important but also threatened ecosystems in the state. And so right now we're focused on grasslands in western Minnesota, especially northwestern Minnesota, and then on the Mississippi River, which is just such a critical flyaway, as we call it, for migratory birds. Something like 60% of North American species use the Mississippi River as kind of a route to help them find their way on their migratory journey into the north, and then also as really important breeding habitat. And there's just a recent publication showing that the Mississippi River is one of the most endangered rivers in the country and in the world. We've got concerns with pollution, concerns with too much water, really. So I actually grew up in Idaho. It's hard to conceive of too much water coming from a desert environment, but that river floods too much, and the trees that are in those bottomland forests just can't handle that much water. And so you go for a drive down from the Twin Cities down to La Crosse area, you see these bottomland habitats filled with snags, with standing dead trees, because those trees just can't sit in saturated soils for months on end. And so we're working to try and reforest those with our partners from the Fish and Wildlife and the DNR and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, try and get forests growing on those habitats as well. So,
well, if they are flooding, what would stop them from reflooding after you planted the trees?
No, that's a good question. That's why we need our partners, because the Army Corps is helping try and address some of those. Trying to raise the levels of some of the islands with thin layer placements of some of the dredge material. But in reality, we're just trying to change the composition of those forests as well. Some of those trees that could handle short-term floods aren't doing so well, so we're trying to replant trees that can tolerate longer floods.
I don't want to make this political, but does the Army Corps of Engineers, are they a little bit easier to get along with? Because in my history, knowing about them, it was their main job is to make sure we have transportation up and down the river, and they could care less about your trees or the birds.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk with them, actually. They've got a great collection of foresters that work in the districts up and down the river, as you said. And if you go back in time 50 years, bird habitat or even forestry was not prominent in their mind. And what forestry they did do was thinking about forest products and how do we manage these bottomland forests to make sure they're productive. And things have changed really in the past 20 years, where they see the need for those forests, not only for birds, but also, the stability of those islands, which are really important for fish habitat and the well-being of the fish community in the river. And so the Army Corps is just as interested as we are in wanting to partner with us in getting those forests and those islands healthy and happy again.
Well, if the river has a history now of flooding more often than not, it's very simple. That's because we're dumping more and more water into the river at any one point. That's because we've drained and drained and drained. Yeah. So wouldn't it make sense to start working back up on the watersheds?
We're doing that as well. Yeah, we're doing that as well. Audubon is not really closely involved in that, and that's the challenge I alluded to earlier, trying to maintain our agricultural productivity, but look for opportunities to if we've got wetlands that we put drain tile in that are not the most productive sites for agriculture, let's plug up some of that drain tile and let that water sit in the system, because certainly the building of the locks and dams amplifies some of the flooding, but so does the draining of the wetlands, which are, that important matrix for the grassland ecosystems and for shorebirds and ducks and waterfowl as well.
You mentioned that one thing you're involved with Audubon is to restore a lot of our grasslands in western Minnesota, southwestern, I assume. Big job, because I don't know the numbers, and sometimes they're so big you can't even fathom, but like 90-some% of our grasslands are gone.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a lot of comeback there.
Yeah. Yes.
Before you have to restore a lot of them before you even move the needle.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And if you restore this one and it's surrounded by a black sea of dirt, not much is going to change there.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's great. It's a good point. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 98 to 99%, at least of our native prairie in Minnesota, is converted, to something else. It's not native prairie anymore. It's just such great agricultural land. You can't necessarily blame farmers for wanting to take advantage of those opportunities. So we're working in a couple areas, and one is just improving the prairie that does remain. In a lot of those areas, there's encroachment from shrubs and trees, and so where we're planting trees in the eastern half of the state, we're cutting them down on the west and trying to get those prairies back to prairies and making them good, suitable habitats for prairie chickens and grouse and all of the grassland birds and meadowlarks as well. But I'm really excited about another opportunity. One of Audubon's national programs is something called Audubon Conservation Ranching. And that's where we're saying, can we produce good habitat for grassland birds, even beyond just those native grasslands. And so we're working with cattle farmers or ranchers, depending on what you want to call them in different parts of the state, to change the way we raise cattle so that you can have that balance of productive field and grassland birds at the same time. And so I'm so excited about this. Part of what attracted me to working for Audubon is this program, because a lot of people, if you look at the people that are modeling habitat around the world, they say we need something like half of the world to be, pristine habitat in order for the, all the birds and
not going to happen.
Not going to happen, right? Yeah, it's more like 13 to 15% of the country that's public land right now. So it's just such a void. How could we possibly find some middle ground there? And that's where I think private land conservation is the future. Finding ways for agriculture to be compatible with wildlife. That's the future of conservation.
I would add to that, having been into the conservation wildlife wars for a long time, and that is we've neglected to bring farmers to the table to talk about this. Yep. It's always been, they're evil. Yeah. We're going to straighten you out. And so I'm encouraged by that. The other thing I think you and I chatted about earlier, and that is Pheasants Forever, I think, learned this lesson, maybe Audubon as well. You go to the public and you're trying to get, hey, we need more grassland because the Tweety birds are in trouble. And the Pheasants Forever, you say, hey, we need more grasslands because we have to have more pheasants. And people on the sideline would say, oh, yeah, Pheasants Forever, you just want more feathered targets. And other people would say, Tweety birds, hey, excuse me, I got to pay my taxes. I'm not worried about the Tweety birds.
Right.
But if you say grasslands are needed because our water needs to be cleaner than it is, and we're going to run out of clean water, that resonates more.
Yep.
Have you learned that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's what Audubon, says the birds tell us, and what the birds tell us is that, that what's good for birds is good for us. And so, as much as Audubon is, and I am personally, love going out and seeing grassland birds and seeing forest birds, I know that when we're taking care of habitat and improving conditions for the birds, it's good for us as well, for so many reasons, from clean air and water. And now we're seeing opportunities to have agriculture partner with good grassland birds as well. But, just providing spaces for people to go out and enjoy nature and hunt and fish and count birds or whatever it is that entertains them. That's going to be good for the birds. At the same time, it benefits society. And that's what we want to find, those win-win opportunities. Yeah,
we're going to take a short break here, Dale, but real quick, I have to tell you, I just came back from my alma mater, Iowa State. I had an opportunity to chat with some journalism students there, and they gave me some award. I don't know why, but anyway.
I have a hunch why.
But I shared with him a story about the first time I saw the power of the press, because as a journalism, fish and wildlife biology student, you had to work as a reporter. And because I was a fish and wildlife student, all of us would notice things in campus. If there was something rustling in the bushes, we'd go look at it because we're fish and wildlife.
Right, yeah.
Other students, they just walk right on by. We would look, and we were finding robins that no longer could fly, no longer could walk. They were just fluttering there. And when they would, sometimes you'd find them and they're fluttering and they died in your hand. And when they died, rigor mortis immediately set in, which for those of us, we knew that was strange also. So we started bringing these dead robins to the Fish and Wildlife offices, and the professor there gathered them up, and we sent them to a lab to be, what's going on here? Yeah. Lo and behold, this is my big scoop. Here's the Iowa State ground crew. Iowa State, the center of agriculture expertise on how to do everything right, including chemicals. They were spraying their Dutch elm trees for Dutch elm disease and totally ignoring what that chemical might have an impact on robins, because it was the chemical drips off the elm tree, falls into the ground, the earthworm, night crawlers gather that up, and they come up to the surface in a rainstorm, and robin comes along eating these until he gets so much in his body that he can no longer survive. And so that was my first big story there.
Oh, wow.
And it got picked up by the Des Moines Register, and very embarrassing for the Iowa State.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
but that was my first lesson on the value of journalism and sticking with the facts, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, it echoes the story of Rachel Carson and her famous, Silent Spring, teaching us that, our eagerness to use all these new chemicals that we learned how to synthesize, had some repercussions and some unintended consequences that we're still sort of, trying to remediate in response to those.
I remember I drank that Rachel Carson book up. So.
I bet.
Listen, Dale, we'll be back. We have to take a short break. We're talking with Dale Gentry of the Audubon Society. We'll be back after these messages.
The Shirks love Connecticut water. It's no secret, have for many years. We live out in the country and we have that ironclad well water. Well, we treat all of our water with the Connecticut Whole Home Water Treatment System. And we also use Connecticut's K5 drinking water system. That buildup, that white buildup you get around faucets, nope, we've got none of that. Our dishes are clean. Katie loves what Connecticut water does for her hair and skin, and the boys drink water out of the K5 system all day long. The best part to me, the well water taste and foul smell, they are gone. So call Connecticut like we did and look forward to clean, safe water.
Reducing carbon emissions is good for everyone. But how do we reduce emissions while also meeting our world's increasing energy needs? Using propane is an excellent way to reduce emissions while meeting energy needs today. Propane is a clean, non-toxic energy source that helps reduce carbon emissions right now. In fact, propane's carbon intensity score in Minnesota is only 80. Grid electricity in Minnesota, including wind and solar, has a much higher carbon intensity score of 136. Who knew that using propane was much cleaner than electricity? Plus, the abundance of propane and growth of renewable propane means it can be used for generations to come. Millions of Americans rely on propane to heat their homes and businesses, fuel vehicles on road and off, and much more, making propane the right energy right now. Find out more about what propane can do for you and the environment by going to propane.com.
Welcome back to this Minnesota Bound podcast. Ron Sherry, your host today. And as I said earlier, because I think I'm funny, this show is for the birds, but actually I'm visiting with Dale Gentry, who is with the Audubon Society here in Minnesota. He's got an important job of coordinating conservation efforts on behalf of birds and the Audubon Society. Dale, welcome back again. Let's talk a little bit about the Audubon Society itself. How it's one of the first names I remember as a bird conservation group.
Yeah. Yep. It's been around since 1905. I think it's the oldest, sort of conservation nonprofit in the country. And, I think I think we have a great reputation in part because we do a lot of great work, among them the Christmas bird count, where people have been going out for over 100 years to do these sort of standardized counts in the same circles around the Christmas and New Year's every year, and that gives us the ability to look at long-term trends and use science to guide our work. And we really feel like we need the best science in order to make sure we're putting our conservation money to work in the best way that we can. And so Audubon's just been working on birds for years, and we're plan to continue to do that as long as we can.
I'm curious because some conservation groups are, going off into the sunset because younger generation. Is the Audubon growing yet, or declining, or maybe you don't want to say?
No, that's a good question. No, yeah, I think we're growing, and we've certainly seen a lot of positive growth in the past couple of years. Things like the pandemic, where people suddenly found, in guidelines to avoid congregating in public, and so they started going out for hikes and couldn't find a pair of binoculars on the shelf anymore because people were finding, what was right in their backyard that they had missed for all these years was so appealing. And so Audubon's growing for a number of reasons, I think, because of our good science and our good work, but we're helping just give people opportunity to connect with nature and with birds. And so I'm excited about the future.
Well, I became a bird watcher through college, I think, because I had to take a course in ornithology, which was fascinating. But I think I shared this story with you. Out in the field, we were on a early morning field trip with a professor, ornithology, and all of us have binoculars, and we're listening and looking birds, and the professor points to one way up in the treetops there. It had a bright orange breast and black and white, and anybody know what that is? I go, no, I don't know what that is. Says, well, that's a rose-breasted grosbeak. I'll go, wow, what a beautiful bird. And he said, yes, they're native here, in my case, Iowa. It's true in Minnesota as well.
Yeah.
They're native here, and they spend all summer with us. I go, wow. Now, I'm in my late teens, early 20s. I thought I knew everything in the woods. I thought I had seen everything.
Yep.
I had never seen one of those. It was a lesson to me that keep your eyes open. You don't know. Anyway, I share that with you because bird watching ever since is fascinating to me. You can't go through a winter like we did and not look at a chickadee and say, how in the hell do you do it?
Isn't that true? Yeah, those little teeny, couple ounce birds that can endure a Minnesota winter. It's remarkable, and it's actually quite fascinating how they're eating seeds and finding little insect eggs in adult that are surviving the winter in their own way, and they get by. But yeah, and that's something I've come to appreciate about my career in ornithology and what interested me in birds as well, is that as I get to know the birds better, I think it gives you a better sense of the woods, and I've always enjoyed spending time outdoors, and it makes traveling fun. If I go down to Florida for spring break or something, you get to see the unique birds down there. And it also, we think birds are an excellent indicator of what's going on in nature. And so that's part of why we feel like when we see those declines with birds in the country, it's a hint that we need to take action, because
you better look at what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
I'll never forget. It's a little bit off the topic, but when I was at Iowa State, I forget what course, but anyway, we had a guest speaker who studied polar bears.
Mm-hmm.
And the most remarkable thing he said is that if the hunter got a polar bear, native Eskimo, sometimes they would analyze their if they have any chemicals.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And here they found polar bears in the Arctic that were carrying chemicals from Iowa cornfields.
You're like, wow, how did that happen? Yeah.
Well, there's a reason. The chemical got in the river got in the ocean went up currents this way, and we're in the seals. The seals got it, and the polar bears ate the seals.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Probably snow geese, too, that are heading up there and eating out of the fields in Iowa. And
there you go. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And just another bird story for me. The killdeer, I think I was 12 years old. I stumbled across one that was on its nest. And, of course, it straggled away and its wing was hanging. And I go, oh, I'll catch it. And so I chased it. And then suddenly the damn thing flew away. I go, I thought you had a broken wing.
It's pretty effective, right? They did a good job of luring you away from that nest, probably in a Kmart parking lot or something.
Exactly.
Yep.
And later, of course, I got into television. I did a story about the killdeer.
Yes.
And my grandson, I used him as the guinea pig. He went up to this killdeer, and he was going to catch it too. It's a wonderful thing. And, of course, the killdeer uses that trick on fox and everything else.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Anyway. Dale, I just have a couple more minutes here. Dale Gentry, the Audubon Society, I'm talking about. We've talked about some of the work you're doing, some of the things that birds need. As somebody just listening who likes birds, now they think maybe they're feeding them, they're saving the birds. I think that's been kind of poo-pooed. You can feed them for your own enjoyment. It doesn't hurt, What would you tell people who have an interest in birds?
Yeah, about what they can do to help out. Yeah, that's a good. Well, here I think that the greatest place to start, honestly, is just getting to know your birds. And I think that if you get familiar with your backyard birds, your chickadees and cardinals and some of the other things that are flowing through, I think if you get to know those birds, you're going to gain an appreciation for them, and you're going to gain a concern for them. And I think that's true for almost anything. It's hard to care about something that you don't know the first thing about. And as we are educated about what's going on around the world, whether it's in Ukraine or in Central America, we learn about it, and we want to help out. And I think that's just human nature. So the first thing is just get to know your birds, and then there are going to be opportunities. They're tied to water conservation, to air quality, to habitat. So plant a few trees in your yard. Think about your backyard and turning that into bird habitat. Try and plant a few more native trees that are going to be, a good food source for birds. Feeding birds is great. They don't really need it to get by, but it helps us enjoy them. But there are a number of opportunities. And I like to think, at Audubon, we look at our state framework for our spatial priorities as important bird areas, right? So what are the important bird areas in the state that we want to work in to take care of our Minnesota birds? And I want to encourage people to think about their backyard as an important bird area, because we've got research now showing that urban environments, suburban environments, those are really important, especially during migration season. Birds are passing through, they're heading up north, they're looking for a bite to eat as they stop over. So the more food that we can provide, not sunflower seeds and feeders, but insects and berries and whatnot through native plants, can really be a fantastic food source and a great opportunity to serve those birds that you're getting interested in.
Great advice, Dale. Get to know your birds, and you'll have a passion for them.
That's right. It certainly worked for me. Yeah.
Dale Gentry, the Audubon Society, my guest today. So that concludes this Minnesota Bound podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show that went to the birds. Let me say this: we need to thank our sponsors for the Minnesota Bound podcast, and they are in no order of importance here, but Oreo and Ritz crackers for sure. Good eating. My favorite bank, Star Bank. Hewitt Docks. Got to get out on the water, right? Connecticut, my favorite water system. Aluma Trailers. I got one. They're awesome. And Minnesota Propane. Remember, introduce a kid to the great outdoors. Take them bird watching. I'm Ron Schera. Thanks for tuning in.